Hello and welcome to this next lesson in cultural competence where we're going to be looking at misinformation and disinformation. Now, this follows right on the discussions we've been having about politics, and oftentimes those get mixed up. We have information that is out there that is either misleading, wrong, as I say here, the misinformation is false or inaccurate information. It's just getting the facts wrong. And then there's disinformation. This is information that is published purposefully that is wrong and misleading in order to move your opinion in a particular direction. Advertising, that kind of thing. And so for this, we want to understand the psychology as to why people believe some of the things that they see. Some of them which, for a person like you and I, we would look at that and we would say, how is it that that individual believes that that's true? It just seems so obviously wrong. At the same time, no matter how well prepared you are to deal with those particular kind of situations, we all have our blind spots, and we'll be talking about that in just a minute. So we think about, how does this information spread? And I want you to think about how we've seen it in others and what that has meant, and then how we can see it in ourselves. That we believe information because it aligns with our identity. We come across something, let's just, for the sake of argument, think Republican and Democrat. Now, think of it broadly as if maybe these designations are very important to you, maybe they're less important, maybe they're not important at all, but you understand the differences now between Republican and Democrat, and whichever one you align to, that confirms part of your identity. So if I was deeply Republican and I heard ideas from people who are also deeply Republican, I would pay attention to them more. Of course, these are my people. It's my cultural identity. These are the individuals that in general think the way I do. And that affects both sides. Usually we pay attention to information that aligns with our own social norms, the attitudes and what that we have leading up to that. We do notice things that are unique and surprising. Hence we get these, the headlines that are out there. Like there was a recent headline, I want to use this as an example because I thought it was so real. Was since the fall of Roe versus Wade, the state of Texas has rolled in some pretty dramatic law changes in terms of what criteria needs to be met for a person to get an abortion. The headline read something along these lines of woman almost dies being refused treatment where the pregnancy was at risk to her. And immediately advocates with, there we go, there's the problem. Now there was quite a lot of misleading information in that. I read the article, interested to see what was behind that, what was behind the headline. And here's the facts of the case. The individual had a condition in their pregnancy that was a risk to the mother, and the law allowed that individual to pursue an abortion. It was all on the up and up. The hospitals were willing to do that. The problem was she lived out in the middle of somewhere, and the first hospital she went to did not have the facilities or the medications to do it. So she had to drive to another hospital, and I think the same thing happened. And it wasn't until much later and things had progressed and she almost died. Just finally got to a hospital that had the capacity to do the procedure. That is a way different story than what was in the headline. The actual story laid out. So it took reading the whole story to get behind this idea of the headline. So being very, very careful about the difference between headlines that are trying to attract, key issues, trying to attract people's attention, whatnot. The newspaper, in some ways, is not about the message they're trying to say, but it's about selling ads, right? So the newspapers and all of media is trying to sell itself. So we have to be on the watch for those things. Now, a couple other factors that come in, a couple other pieces of psychology that are related to these. So there's confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is that if I'm doing a Google search, I'm going to be more likely to pick ideas. I'll select ideas that align with what I already believe is going on. Now let's add to that Google also has algorithms that identify what I'm picking and choose to give those things to me more often after the first search. So an individual who has a particular opinion goes on the web and looks at 3 pages that are confirming. If they do a search again, almost every page is going to be confirming, and it's going to be more and more confirming. So their searches are not open searches every time. It's not like they've cleared the deck. What they're doing is, I'm going to do this other search, and Google's saying, and we're going to give you exactly what you want to see. It's one of the faults of using search engines as a way to do research, just in general. So we have to be careful about that. Availability heuristics is the notion that we're somewhat on a day-to-day basis, unless we're doing research, unless we're doing, really engaged in trying to find out the real story here, we're kind of lazy. I want to find out what this is about. I'm really not going to go further than the first page in the Google. I won't. I'll just find, particularly if Google has learned what I want and is delivering me up my answers at the beginning. I'm really not going to go very deep. I'll go with the first. I won't even scroll. I'll just go with the first couple things that are there. And now that AI is now integrated into Google, you might notice that when you do a Google search, the thing at the top is an AI result, AI summary of what it's finding. That AI is also giving you what you want to see based on your previous use of Google. So, not a good place to go and figure. Well, it is a good place as long as you continue to go past the first page, or you adjust your search terms to try and get both sides of the story. Now I go down here. So how do we contest this? First, the factors that contribute to our ability to be less swayed by mis and disinformation, including going to school, getting an education like this where we have these open discussions about the realities of this information and their sources, developing analytical reasons, looking for sensical, logical relationships between the variables. Chances are, if it's unbelievable, we all want to live in this conspiracy-filled fantasy world, but chances are it's not true if something is like really, really way out there. Except for aliens. I actually do believe in aliens. Finally, we have numeracy skills. When people are throwing statistics out there, it is really good to have some statistical knowledge about how statistics are used. Statistics don't lie. Statistics are used to bend information. Almost every time we're looking at statistics, it's a factual thing, but it doesn't have the meaning that is usually attributed to statistics. It's used selectively many times to sway a person's opinion in a particular direction. When we're dealing with others, we go back to those same ideas, and you're valuing diversity. You have the capacity for self-assessment. Reading these again here. how we're in a multicultural context. It's institutionalized, and we have to adapt our service delivery to take this into consideration. Misinformation in mental health. Mental health issues don't affect me. Children don't experience mental health issues. People with mental health conditions are violent. All of these things, these beliefs that people have, you can go through them. There's a video on the myths associated with health and whatnot. There's a bunch of crazy stories out there, and I say crazy in the way that they're misleading, misunderstood, and in sometimes purposefully so to guide you in a particular direction. Now we come down to the assessments for the discussion. I'll read it right out. Let's admit it. When we are looking for answers on the web, we like it when we find things that align with our beliefs. Let's take a moment to share experiences about areas we are vulnerable to this. List some examples of both confirmation bias and availability heuristics. For the assignment, you're going to be creating what's called an infographic. You're going to do some research on mis and disinformation, and you're going to create a visual presentation. Now, there's a number of different ways to do this. You can do a really nice infographic on a single slide in like PowerPoint or Keynote or even Google Slides or something like that. You can do a really nice one in there. There's also largely free service called Canva. I have the link in there. If you go to Canva, they actually have templates for infographics. And what you do is you've seen them, and what they are is like graphic representations of ideas. So I want you to, each one of you is going to be tasked to produce an infographic that talks about mis and disinformation, about how and why it spreads, how to counter it, and examples of reliable sources of information to counter that. So that is the assignment for this particular session. For those of you who have a little creative bent, you're going to be enjoying this assignment. And creativity is a big part. I don't want it, if I wanted just text, I'd ask for a paper. I want graphic elements. I want it to have aesthetic appeal, as if you'd put it up on the wall someplace. We won't be doing that, but if it was going to go on the wall, I want it to be appealing and take a deep dive into your creative self, little right brain thing going on, get those creative juices going on, and create a compelling presentation of this information. So with that, we end this particular lesson, and I will see you in the next one.